standing here in the southwest corner of the Temple Mount. Down a ways is a Wailing Wall where 24/7 the Jews come in to pray at the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall it's called. I'm walking on stone that's been recently excavated, which shows the destruction of the temple in AD 70 when the Romans cast the stone over the edge and crushed the pavement. I'm standing on one of the few places in Israel where you could say without a doubt, Jesus probably walked in this area and on this stone. There are only few places like that, but this is the original first century walkway right below the Temple Mount. In this rubble, when they were excavating it, they found a picture of the trumpeter's stand. It was a stand up in the high corner of the southwest part of the Temple Mount. Right on the week of the Passover, on the Sunday before, the trumpeter would stand there and blast the ram's horn of the trumpet, telling the people basically go to find the Passover lamb to get ready for the coming Passover. It was probably at that very moment when that trumpeter was blasting the horn that Jesus would have come over the Mount of Olives, riding on a white donkey, people laying the palm branches, and a crowd breaking out singing, "Hail to the King of David, who has come to set us free." It was a triumphant moment. It was a powerful moment. It was probably not far from here where you find in Mark 13, where the disciples were walking, coming out of the temple on the south end, where they said this in Mark 13, 1 and 2, it says, "As he was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, 'Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings.' And Jesus said, 'Do you not see these great buildings?' replied Jesus. 'Not one stone will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down.' And in fulfillment of even what's declared in Daniel, this prophecy here has been fulfilled." I'm sitting here now in the southern steps of the Temple Mount. It's just around the corner, the southwest corner where we just were, where the trumpeter's stand is. Whenever I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about the subject of how worship was in those days, how they would even make their way up to the temple on these steps that are spaced differently so you could never approach the throne of the Lord where the Lord was in a random way. This is the place where many think that Pentecost happened in Acts 2, 1-4, 9 o'clock in the morning when the church was gathered praying, the Holy Spirit was poured out. And many people feel now that's right here on the southern steps. In the archaeological digs that they've done recently, they found all types of mikvahs, cleansing pools not far from here where the 3,000 could have been baptized. It definitely is a place that reminds me what it means to exalt the Lord, what we're going to talk about in this week's study. In this study so far, we've looked at the command that we are to walk as Jesus walked. And in his humanity, Jesus was man as God intended man to be. He showed us what it means to walk as he walked. We began to look at Holy Spirit dependence. And then we looked at prayerful guidance, obedient living, word-centered focus. And now in this week, we're going to look at what does it mean to exalt the Lord. Exalt Jesus as Jesus always exalted his Father. One of the favorite passages of scriptures that really helps me understand this, because in Philippians 2, verse 5 in the New Century Version, it says we're to think and act just like Jesus. Have the same attitude that Jesus had. And that's a challenging statement for me. It's one thing to act like Jesus. It's another thing to think like Jesus. And one of the beautiful studies for me has been, as I reread the Gospels, is to stop and say, what was Jesus thinking when he did that? What was Jesus thinking when he said that? One of the passages that really challenged me in this way is found in John chapter 3, verse 21. It's kind of an obscure verse, but Jesus frames up an attitude that he has. He says this, "But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what he has done has been done through God." In other words, Jesus, at the beginning of his ministry, is setting up this principle. He says, when you walk in the light, you will see plainly. In other words, it won't be confused. You'll see crystal clear, plainly, that whatever you do that's good, God has done through you, not you yourself. At the end of his ministry in John chapter 17, verse 7, Jesus reiterates this same statement. This is his high priestly prayer in the upper room. And he's praying for his disciples. And then in verse 7, he says this. He says, now they, and this is my disciples, now they know that everything, Father, you have given me comes from you. Again, Jesus is stating the principle. And here he's saying, my disciples understand this, that I always and only exalted my Father as a source of everything. He said, now they, my disciples, know that everything I have came from you, Father. A principle of exalting the Lord. And then those are the two bookends of the life of Christ, that attitude of always exalting the Father that Jesus had. And I always say the books are in between those bookends, or 5, 6 times Jesus said, I can do nothing of my own initiative. I can do nothing of my own accord. It's the Father in me who does the works through me. You see, Jesus always exalted the Father as a source of everything. And we, in the same way, just like the disciples did in the book of Acts, are to always exalt Jesus as the source of everything. I hope as you study this week, you'll see that this type of attitude is a source of real freedom. It's a source of real confidence. It's a source of real peaceful living. Because when we come to the place where we say, it's not about my performance, it's not about who I am, it's not about me, it's all about Him. When we get to that attitude of always exalting Jesus as the source of everything, exalting the Father, now it's not about us. And it brings an incredible amount of freedom and joy and a totally different attitude. You see, Jesus, when He walked on this earth, He never regretted something He did the other day because He never sinned. But He never worried about the future. Why? Because for Jesus, it was always about living in the moment, acknowledging the Father as the source of everything, true freedom, true peace, true joy found in the midst of that. And that's my prayer for you this week as you study that and discuss that in your group.